Welcome to Keep What You Earn, a show for entrepreneurs and business owners who want to scale and build enterprise value without making costly mistakes. I'm your host, Shannon. I'm a CFO and CPA who left a career serving Fortune 50 companies in Wall Street to help business owners just like you make life-changing wealth with your business. These episodes are meant to be super tactical and actionable, but please remember, consult your own financial professional before you implement anything you learn in this podcast. Now, if you'd be interested in working with us to do so, check out the show notes for more information about our company, Keep What You Earn Co. All right, let's start the show. All right, so expanding on the topic of operating profit, which we discussed on the last episode, we talked about operating profit, which is, by the way, your net profit, your net margin. This is fundamentally the indicator that you are running a profitable business, that you have controlled overhead expenses, that you are producing enough from your offers that you're able to sustain the cost of running your business, which is a great place to be. A lot of businesses aren't even profitable. And by the way, your profit can vary from month to month, and it could be up one month and down another, days, weeks. So it's very fluid. So understand that your profitability is not stagnant and that it will change all the time because a lot of things are in and out of your control with regard to what your costs are. So we're going to cover today what to do if your operating profit is in jeopardy. So if you're stuck on operating profit, you're like, I am not profitable. I need to figure out why I'm not profitable. Your best weapon against this is a solid budget. I know, the B word. But when we talk about budgeting, like I uncovered in the last episode, we talk about really just splitting up targeted spending areas. And we can even rename this budget to a profit plan, which is what we normally call it. And splitting up your spending into these targeted areas really allows you to zoom in and double click on what area your business is struggling with. So we group our expenses into fulfillment costs, acquisition costs, and operating costs. Fulfillment are the costs that go into making and delivering your product. That is part of your core offer profit that we've already talked about, okay? So in a sense, sales minus fulfillment costs equals core offer profit. Then we look at the overhead. We look at acquisition costs and we look at operating costs. Acquisition and operating. Acquisition means the cost to acquire new customers. This is marketing spend. This might be travel. This might be conferences. This might be networking groups, et cetera, that are going to help you generate new business activity. The other one is operating costs. Operating costs are really the costs like your overhead, rent, your equipment, your supplies, your tools, your software, administrative costs, office staff, your finance, your legal, things like that. The cost to run a business. So when you're looking at the spread of those different expenses, what you should do is work backwards from your profit. Figure out, hey, I want my operating profit to be about 20% of my total sales, which, by the way, I really recommend you express this as a percentage of sales and not a hard dollar value. I went over that in the last episode. So if you say 20% of sales is your target for your operating profit, then we figure out, okay, so sales is sales, 100%. Minus, we'll say 30% fulfillment cost, okay? We say, okay, mostly my costs are 30% of my price. Then we have a 70% core offer profit. All right, so 30% went to fulfillment. We want to get to 20. So that means we have basically 50 more percent to play with to go across your acquisition and your operating. So maybe your acquisition is 15% and your operating is 35%. It could also go any which way. These are all just made up numbers. You need to be understanding what is typical in your industry, your geography, and for your maturity of your business. What's typical? What phase you're in? What is your core focus area right now? If you're hustling to go sell clients, you need your acquisition cost to be more of a focus. These healthy zones, as I just laid out, let's say it's 30% fulfillment, 15% acquisition, 35% on operating, and then 20% profit. If that's like your broad-based target, that's easy to do, by the way. You could do this in the time it takes you to listen to this episode. You could start setting some of those targets. And then you take your profit and loss statement and you figure out how close are you to those targets and where do you need to be fixing things. And now I want to uncover for you, based on where you're finding issues, these are the things that you could do. We want to work back from the profit and you want to figure out, okay, which area is a bit over our healthy level? Where are we spending a little bit extra money? And this is going to be custom to every business. This is going to be something unique to you based on what your behaviors are, but this will definitely shine a giant flashlight on the culprits. So you might be overspending on advertising.
Hey, did you know that you can actually see my face and watch this episode on YouTube? If you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, make sure you head over there and you subscribe and check out all of the guest episodes along with some of my solos. We're posting every single week on YouTube. See you there.
One of the biggest culprits is when acquisition cost is bloated and you're not justifying it through sales. So, acquisition costs being bloated as a percentage of sales. So, if acquisition costs are supposed to be 15% of sales, but they're actually like closer to 40%, a couple things are happening. One is you might be spending the right amount of money on acquisition costs like ads, but they're not effective, right? So they're not generating the right amount of sales to then proportion out themselves. So the dollars you're spending aren't as efficient. So that's something you want to look into. The other thing is you might simply be just spending more money on a marketing channel that isn't working for you. And you should just be really honing in on simplifying your marketing. So that might be an indicator that, hey, maybe we need to take a beat and we need to just go back to doing some word of mouth referrals and doing some basic organic marketing and going back to creative that we know works instead of experimenting and playing with new stuff right now. Like maybe in this season, we stop doing it. Okay. If your operating costs are a little bit bloated, you need to be looking at maybe a clear expense reimbursement policy where you're limiting employee credit card spend. Are you spending too much on travel and meals and ancillary costs that are a little less predictable? Do you have an over spending on subscriptions and software, memberships, and so on? Maybe expenses over a certain threshold have to go through you for review. Maybe you have to control new subscriptions or new enrollments, new contracts of a certain dollar value or more, where you have to really kind of do an ROI study to make sure you're going to be able to get that. And definitely audit timesheets and the workloads of your employees that are part of your overhead, your indirect costs, your office staff, and so on. Look at hourly employees, look at if they're using their time efficiently. And of course, look at the investment that you're making in your personal development versus your team's personal development or skills. I notice this a lot. I see a lot of owners who are, and by the way, I'm not poo pooing on investing in yourself. I am saying, though, that you should do so consciously with the understanding that there is an opportunity cost of that money going to you and not your team. We actually had a big shift recently where we decided to reinvest any money that I would have spent at a mastermind this year, money that I would have spent to go to like an elevated mastermind group. I instead redirected into, I'm going to take that money, I'm going to put it aside, and I'm going to use it for team skills development so that we can accelerate the ability of me to get out of the day to day of the business. So this is something to consider, right? As you're budgeting is knowing, hey, I'm going to do it so consciously, but I'm going to keep the same amount of spend. I'm just going to redirect it. So instead of saying yes to my mastermind and to the development of my team, I chose one or the other in this season. And I chose to have some discipline over picking one and sticking to it right now. And when we look at budgeting in this context, we're not saying that you have to say no. We can just say, not now. And it might just be the right thing, not the right time. So the most important thing to keep in mind as you're looking at your operating profit, is this the season I'm in? The season I'm in right now, what's my priority? What's my micro goal? And this is where, by the way, something like an EOS comes into play. If you know your quarterly rocks, if you know what you should be focused on right now, if your focus is on acquiring new clients, by all means, shift your acquisition target range to that for a temporary amount of time. These are not absolutes. These can change every month, every quarter, these healthy zones, right? But you should be careful with adapting to your behavior as opposed to setting the tone. You want to be going ahead of your behavior and saying, this is my intention versus reacting and basing it off of what you normally do and never really changing. So as you set these targets, just keep in mind the season that you're in, the focus that you're going to be working on. And if it's operations and building your back end team, great. Then maybe you want to be enhancing some of your systems, your processes. You want to invest in someone to help document SOPs. These are all great investments to make, but you should do so in the right season. You should do so when you know that, hey, this is when we have enough to play with over here while still maintaining profit. I think one of the biggest struggles is maintaining that profit while investing in all these other things. It's so challenging. It's definitely not easy. Easier said than done. But if you have a framework, if you have a model that you can follow and consciously say, hey, if we are going to spend more money on acquisition costs, we have to consciously take away from the operating cost, or I have to be okay with reducing the profit that I can take home. And you have to make that decision consciously. And I think if you had to hit a button, let's say, like curtain number 1, curtain number 2, right? And say, hey, you can either reduce your ad spend or you can reduce your profit. If you want to make this decision, you want to invest in this new thing, you got to pick one of these two things to say no to. You almost have to act like every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And it's not a scarcity mindset, but I am saying that you have to control these types of things if you want to maintain consistent margins and you want to build a business that is consistently profitable. I promise you, you'll have far less stress if you do this way. So next up, we're going to be talking about cash flow. That's a little bit different than operating profit. And admittedly, cash flow is where a lot of entrepreneurs get the most stuck. So I'm excited to dig into that very soon.
As you think about growing and scaling your business, it's important to focus on how your operating costs align with your profit and personal goals. Are you allocating your resources wisely? Are your expenses supporting growth or are they holding you back? Building a sustainable and profitable business takes intentional budgeting and regular assessments of where your money's actually going. Now, with a power session, you can get personalized strategies to help your businesses thrive. Check out the show notes for more information on power sessions and how we can work with you to create the profit plan your business needs for a successful 2025.